Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. We are in Masechet Eruvin, Daf Lamed Chet 38. We're starting a new Mishnah. We have a machloket in the Mishnah between the Rabbi Eliezer and the sages about if you have 2 days in a row in which you can't Yom Tov and Shabbat, and so the laws of Tichum Shabbat apply to both equally. You can't go outside more than 2,000 amot. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at you, but I'm looking at the screen. I'll try to look at both. Okay, so you have to go to the, right, you can't, Tichum Shabbat applies to both. The question is, if I want to make a Tichum both on Yom Tov and on Shabbat, can I make a one Tichum this way and that way on 2 different days? Do I consider them as 2 separate periods? Or is Shabbat and Yom Tov considered one connected period? And whatever Tichum I make, wherever I set my center of place before the first day is going to apply to the second day as well. So that's what's going to incorporate our attention today. And this question of 2 days or 1 day will be the subject of the following discussion. So let's get right into it in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yom Tov samuch LaShabbat, ben milifaneha, ben milaachareha, מערב אדם שני עירובין, ואומר, עירובי בראשון למזרח, ובשני למערב. So I have Yom Tov and Shabbat back to back, whether it's on Friday or on Sunday, it doesn't matter. I can make 2 Eruvin. Let's do the case when Yom Tov is on Friday. So Thursday afternoon, I have to actually place 2 different Eruvim. I take 1 piece of bread and put it to the west, another piece of bread and put it to the east. And I say, the eruv for the first day is going to be to the east. And my eruv for the second day is going to be to the west. And thereby, on Friday, on Yom Tov, I can go to the east, 2,000 amot, and then that'll be my center, and I can go 2,000 amot further. And then on Shabbat, I want to go to the west, so I can go to the west, those 2,000 amot. In other words, these are separate days, and so I can even go 2 different directions. Or barishon lema'arav ubasheni lemizrach, or I can switch it around. Eruvi barishon ubasheni kibnei airi, or I can make one eruv and say this eruv outside the city is for Yom Tov, and on Shabbat, the second day, I want my home to be here in this village, or the other way around. Eruvi basheni barishon kibnei airi. And I was giving a lot of different permutations. All of them are fine. They're 2 separate days. I have to make 2 eruvin. Actually have to make them both before, right, on Thursday afternoon for the next coming 2 days. That's Rabbi Eliezer. Hachamim omerim, o me'arev l'ruach achat, o eno me'arev kol ikar, o me'arev l'shnei yamim, o eno me'arev kol ikar. He says, no, you cannot do this. Either have to do it to one side, or don't make an eruv at all. In other words, both days, Yom Tov and Shabbat, are considered one long period of holiness. And so if I want to make an eruv, I can, but it's going to apply only to one in one direction. I can make eruv for both days, but I can't say the eruv only applies to 1 day, and the second day I want the city to be my home. Chachamim have double language because they're responding to the 2 different cases that Rabbi Eliezer has said. The first case of Rabbi Eliezer was 2 different directions, and the second case was making an eruv on 1 day and no eruv on the second day. So he said both of those are not good. This is important because the Talmud is going to ask about the double language of Chachamim, and it's going to derive something else from it. But this is the double language we're talking about. Okay, so Kesad Yaseh, according to Chachamim, what can you do, or what must you do? Molicho barishon umachshich alav venotlo ubalo, basheni machshich alav veochlo ubalo, venimsa mistaker behalichato umistaker be'eruvo. So if a person, according to Chachamim, wants to have an eruv on both days, it has to be both days because it doesn't work just on 1 day. So he'll take it there, let's say Thursday afternoon, and he'll stay with it. And he doesn't want to leave it there because he's going to need it for Shabbat also, and you don't want it to disappear. And so he'll stay with it until it gets dark, then carry it home. He can carry because it's Yom Tov. And then on Friday afternoon, he'll walk there again and leave the eruv in that spot until it gets dark, and then he can eat it. He can't carry, but he can eat it while he's there. And now he benefited because he can walk all that way on Yom Tov and on Shabbat, and he also had a chance to eat his bread, and so he got a meal out of it as well. Okay, it's interesting that the fact that Chachamim require him to actually go there twice, because if he really thinks that it's totally one day, then why can't you make an eruv only on Thursday afternoon, and that will apply to both days if it's one long period. We're going to see that Chachamim actually are being machmir for both possibilities, that it's one day or 2 days, and so therefore you have to do something on both, but you can't do something different on both. That's his key point. If you're making eruv, it applies to both days. If it's one direction, it applies the same direction on both days. Ne'achal barishon eruvo larishon ve'en eruvo lasheni. So therefore, for Chachamim, if I made it on Thursday and I put it there and it was gone, it was eaten, then the eruv only works for Yom Tov, for Friday, and not for Shabbat, right? Because I needed to be there for Shabbat as well. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Modim atem li shehen shetei kedushot. If that's true, you just said that, right? It only works if I has to be there for Thursday and Friday. It's no good. So see, aren't you agreeing to me that it's actually 2 days? Because here you just made a case where the eruv works on Yom Tov on Friday, but then not on Shabbat if it was eaten on Thursday. Okay, so that's Rabbi Eliezer's challenge to the Chachamim. We're going to see Chachamim are going to answer that they're being machmir on both ways. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Very interesting cases. So the Gemara starts off with that double language that I pointed out. Gemara, l'ruach achat ma'inihu l'shnei yamim. When the Chachamim say it has to be in one direction, what do they mean by that? They mean that they have to do the same thing for both days. And then they say l'shnei yamim, you have to make the eruv for both days. Ma'inihu l'ruach achat. What do you mean by that? It means it has to be the same direction. Hainu kamaita. The rabbis, you're just repeating yourself. Okay, I explained that I think it's a literary parallelism. The Rabbi Eliezer said 2 cases Chachamim are responding to both. But in fact, it's the same substance. And both, that's what's bothering the Talmud. And so it answers with a lengthy dialogue. In other words, the Gemara is filling in the dialogue between these 2 sages and say, Hachi kamre le Rabbanan Rabbi Eliezer. The first statement that they said is, don't you agree, let's say you only have 1 day, just Shabbat. You would agree, right, that you can't make an eruv for half of the morning in this way and the afternoon in a different direction. You can't split a day in 2, right? Everyone agrees with that. Amar lehen aval, they said, indeed. The word aval can also mean indeed. They agree with that. So Chachamim come back and they say, Keshem she'en me'alvin liyom echad, chesyo l'darom, chesyo l'safon, kach en me'alvin l'shnei yamim, yom echad l'mizrach, v'yom echad l'ma'arav. So that's the content of their second question when they say l'shnei yamim. So the point is here that so too, just like you can't take 1 day and split it into morning and afternoon, so too you should agree that you can't take a 2-day period when it's back to back and make 1 day to the east and 1 day to the west, because they're conceptually treating both 2 days as one long period. So that's Rabbanan's question. The Rabbi Eliezer says, Hatam kedusha achat, hacha shetei kedushot. Okay, now we get the essence of their argument. The Rabbi Eliezer says, in the case of 1 day of Shabbat, that's all one period of holiness. Whereas here, it's 2 different days, it's 2 different periods of holiness. And therefore, it's okay, you can split the difference. Amar lehen Rabbi Eliezer. Now Rabbi Eliezer is going to turn the tables and challenge Rabbanan. Atem modim she'im arev beraglav beyom rishon me'arev beraglav beyom sheni. Ne'achal erevo beyom rishon en yoseh ala beyom sheni. So Rabbi Eliezer says, don't you agree that, let's say I go and there's another way to make an eruv. Usually the cases we're talking about is I take a loaf of bread or a meal and I put it somewhere and that represents where I am. But if you didn't have a bread or if you didn't want to, you can go and make an eruv with your actual body. You can go to that spot, 2,000 amot or however much you want outside the city and just stay there throughout Ben Hashemashot. And then after it gets dark, then you can go back home and you've established your place by standing there. So Rabbi Eliezer says, you agree that I can stand there on the first day and then I can go and stand there on the next day, right? And you also agree that if I did it with food and then it got eaten, that I can't use, I don't have an eruv for the second day, right? That was the sefa of the Mishnah, where the rabbis agree that you have to put the food there both days. So why do you have to put it there both days? If in fact it's all one long day, then it should be sufficient. On Thursday afternoon, I either walk there or I put the food there, and then I don't have to do anything else on Friday afternoon. Amar lo aval, yes, we agree to that. Ha la'eh shete kedushot hen. So they said, yes, we agree. And then they'll say, la'eh means lahi, is it not then two separate periods of Kedusha? Rabbi Eliezer is saying, if you have to do something on Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon, isn't it two Kedushot? Rabbanan, sapoke misapeka lehu, v'achal lechumra, v'achal lechumra. Says, you're right. But Rabbanan are actually taking both sides. They want to be machmir for both possibilities, and therefore they say, if you want to make an eruv, you have to do it both days, Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon. Because maybe it's 2 days. At the same time, you can't make a difference in eruv. You can't make one to the west and one to the east, or one day yes eruv, one day no eruv, because perhaps it really is 1 day, so they're machmir in both directions. Okay, so that explains their position. Amru lo Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer, so they ask him, wouldn't you agree that you cannot make an eruv on Yom Tov for Shabbat that comes after it? Amar lehem aval, they said, yes, we agree. Ha la'i kedusha ahati. So they said to him, so then that means you think that they're really one sanctity, right? Because you're not allowed to, we're going to see it's right. That's the answer. The Rabbi Eliezer says, Hatam mishum hachana. Okay, so the Rabbi Eliezer says you have to, when you're doing on 2 days different ways, you have to put them both there on Thursday afternoon. One for have in mind for Yom Tov, and one you'll have in mind for Shabbat. You can't do it on Yom Tov itself for Shabbat. So the rabbis say, doesn't that mean, therefore, that it's one holiness? Because you can't split it up and do something in the middle. And they said, no, it's a different reason why we can't do that. Doesn't mean that mean it's two, right? It's one. And Rabbi Eliezer says, no, in fact, it's two. And so really, I could do something separate, and I could do one thing on the first day and one thing on the second day. But the reason I can't do it on Yom Tov itself, and I have to do it before, is different. Is because of hachana. I can't prepare something on Yom Tov for Shabbat, just like cooking. You can't cook something on Yom Tov for Shabbat. That's a different tichum, right? Eruv, that's a different eruv that we make, eruv tavshilin. And so, in fact, Rabbi Eliezer sticks with his position. It's 2 separate days, but yet I have to do both of them on Thursday, so I don't prepare Yom Tov for Shabbat. Okay, so that's the end of the conversation that we filled in, and now we understand their positions a lot better, that the Rabbanan are actually have a doubt about it, and so they're machmir both for both ways. I can go back to my outline here. So Rabbi Eliezer said there are 2 separate holy days. However, he still thinks that you can't prepare from the first to the second, so both have to be before. The Chachamim basic opinion is they're 1 period, but he's also machmir for both. Okay, so this was the elaboration we just had, and now we're going to quote a baraita that's going to take us through the end. That's going to have 3 different opinions. Rabbi, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the last generation Tana. Then we're going to have Rabbi Yehuda. Don't confuse him with Rabbi. There's Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, who's a 4th generation Tana. And then the Rashbag and Rabbi Ishmael are going to have a different position. Their position is going to be also that it's 1 period. Similar. Okay, well, we'll see. Let's look at it inside and make it all clear. Tano Rabbanan. Arev beraglav b'yom rishon, ma'arev beraglav b'yom sheni. Nechal eruvo b'yom rishon, en yoseh alav b'yom sheni tibre Rabbi. So if you went and made a physical eruv with your body on the first day, you still got to do it again on the second day. And if you made it with food on the first day and the food was eaten, then you're going to have a problem. You can't go to that direction on the second day. This is similar to the Chachamim in our Mishnah. And so this here is Rabbi. So you can remember Rabbi is the same as Chachamim in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda, however, says, Harezeh Hamar Gamal. Because we saw this term already. That's when a person is stuck in the middle. So he has to take the chumrot of both. Chamar Gamal, meaning he's both a donkey driver and a camel driver. One you have to pull, one you have to push. So he's pulled in two different directions, so he can't go either way. So in this case, where he made an eruv, let's say 2,000 amot outside his city for Yom Tov, and then it gets eaten on Yom Tov. So if on Shabbat, that means he can only travel between them, those 2,000 amot between them. He can't go anywhere, let's say, to the west of the city, and he can't go any further to the east of the Techum. So that's Chamar Gamal, so it's Machmir in all ways. Where it sounds like, according to the B, there was just no Eruv, so now you're like one of the people in the city. It's not totally Machmir on both ways. Okay, that's the second. The third opinion is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, Omerim, Arev beragla barishon, en me'arev beragla basheni. Nachal eruvo b'yom rishon, yoseh alav basheni. So they say all you have to do it. This is a new. We haven't seen this opinion yet. That all you have to do is it on the first day. If you stood there on Thursday afternoon, then you're good for both days to come. If you put your food there on Thursday afternoon, you're good for Yom Tov and for Shabbat as well. So in other words, he's really thinking about it like one day and a one period. And even though we said the sages said one period, but we saw that they're really machmir for both. And so that chumrah for both ways is what Rabbi Yehuda is going to end up saying. But Rashbag and Rabbi Ishmael stick with it's really one period totally, and even lehakel that I can do just one in the beginning and don't have to worry about anything else after that. Okay, good. So now I think we have the full range of opinions, and let's figure out what is going to be the halacha. Amarav, halacha k'arba'a zekenim halalu. Ba'alibad Rabbi Eliezer de'amar shetei kedushot hen. So Rav says we're going to follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer and four sages. We're about to tell you who those four sages are. That say it's two separate days, two separate periods, and therefore I have to make two eruvim, but I can make them in different directions, or I can make an eruv only for one day. All that is permitted. So that's Rabbi Eliezer, the first opinion in our Mishnah. And in agreement with him, Be'eluhen, Arba Zikanim, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yoshua ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. Okay, this is already strange because we already just saw these two quoted saying the opposite. So okay, we're going to have a question on that. Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda setim ta'a. Bikadam rechad menayu Rabbi Elazar, mapek Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda setim ta'a. So there's machloket about the last one. Is it this Rabbi Yosef or is it Rabbi Elazar? All right, fine. So we have four sages that agree with Rabbi Eliezer. Now the question is these two. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Ishmael bar Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, ipecha sham inan lehu. We go back to our chart here, right? We said Rav saying halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer that you consider them two separate holy periods. Okay, fine. And he said also Rashbag and Rabbi Ishmael, right? Ben Beroka agree with that, but that's not what they were quoted as saying in this baraita, right? Instead, that was Rabbi's opinion, if anything. It was not even exactly that. Okay, so why are you saying that they agree with you, and then we have a contradiction about what they said? So we answer, epuch, you know what, reverse it. Let's say that they actually say the opposite. Yachi hainu Rabbi, but that's the same as Rabbi's opinion, so why is this presented as a machloket? Ema v'chen amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, so we have to reread the Braita. Rabbi thinks it's two separate periods, and then it says, and also Rashbag and Bishmael also think it's two separate periods. They all agree with Rabbi Eliezer, and so that is that's the halacha. Okay, good. Now, a question on the statement of Rav. You just said we follow Rabbi Eliezer and these four sages. If Rabbi agrees with them, why not include Rabbi as part of them? Rabbi Tanale v'la barla. Actually, Rabbi just said the opinion as quoting someone else, but it was not in fact his own opinion. He didn't agree with it himself. Okay, so maybe say about the other ones that also they were just quoting an opinion, but it wasn't their own opinion. No, no, he learned it directly. He heard the tradition that those four elders really say that. So it's not only from a hearsay or a quote from a quote where you're not sure if they really believe that or not. Okay, good. So that resolves Rav. while he's alive. But now we have, okay, that resolves Rav so far. But now we have another question after one of his students died. Kinach nafsheh de Rav Huna, ayil Rav Chisda lemirma de Rav aderav. So Rav Chisda, another student, came to the Bet Midrash, and he had a contradiction between two statements of Rav. It says, Mi amar Rav halacha karba zekenim, v'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer, damar shetei kedushoten. Right, we just learned this whole thing that Rav agrees that at two separate periods of holiness, so you could make your eruv in two directions, whatever you want. Did he really say that? V'ha'itmar Shabbat v'Yom Tov, Rav amar noda bazeh asura bazeh. Regarding a different case altogether, an egg that's laid on one of the days, if you have Yom Tov and Shabbat back to back, is prohibited on the next day. Now, why? If you consider them to be two separate periods of holiness, right? I understand. On the day itself, when it's laid, it's called nolad, special category, prohibited. You can't have an egg that's laid that day. But the next day is allowed. And if they're two separate holinesses, and that's what I've just said, then I should be allowed to eat the egg on the next day. So what's the problem then? So Amarabba hatam mishum hachana. Again, like we answered before. So the problem is not that it's nolad, but the problem is that you are preparing. So if it's born on Yom Tov and Yom Tov is on Friday, then you can't have it on Yom Tov because that's nolad. You can't have it the next day either because then you prepared. It's like you cooked something on Yom Tov, then you can't eat it on Shabbat. So indeed, that's why it's not allowed. But indeed, they are two separate holinesses. Okay, how do we know that hachana is a problem? Now we get the source for it. It's very important halacha. The Tanya bayom hashishi hechinu v'echinu asher eviu, and they had the man. They're collecting the man. On Friday, they had to go and get double. So when do they prepare? On Chol mechin Shabbat, v'chol mechin liyom tov. That's only when it's a regular weekday. Then you can prepare for the next day. Then Yom Tov mechin Shabbat, and Shabbat mechina liyom tov. But two holy days cannot prepare for each other. And so that's how we know that law. Okay, good. So we resolved that case, and Rabbi was able to resolve that case. And now Abaye says, Male Abaye, Ela haditnan kesad hu oseh, molicho barishon umachshich alav, venotlo ubalo, basheni machshich alav veochlo ubalo, hakemechin miyom tov leShabbat. Abaye says, now that you brought up this, Rabbi, you brought up this answer, this principle of hachana, can't prepare from one day to the next. Then look at the next part, the second part of the Mishnah, which is quoting about Chachamim. And according to Chachamim, if you want to make an eruv on either day, you have to make it for both days. And you have to do something on both days. What do? You go there on the first day, Thursday afternoon, and you wait there. And then you take the eruv back home, because it's Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry, and you want to save it. And then you come Friday afternoon again, and you go back to the same place, and you wait there until nightfall and eat it. Well, how come you're allowed to do that? In that case, I'm using the time on Yom Tov to prepare for Shabbat, right? I'm preparing an eruv on Yom Tov for Shabbat, and this should not be allowed because everybody agrees with this principle of hachana. There's no disagreement about that. So how do Chachamim say that one is allowed to do that? Amar le Rabba, mi savrat sof hayom koneh eruv, techelat hayom koneh eruv, v'Shabbat mechina le'asma. So this is getting back to a question we had a couple of days ago. When precisely does the eruv kick in? When does it take effect? Well, you thought it's the end of the day on Thursday, on Friday afternoon. And so that's kicking in on Yom Tov, but not so. It's actually the beginning of the next day. The beginning of Shabbat, in other words, 1 millisecond after Set HaKochavim. That's when the Eruv kicks in. So actually, it kicks in on Shabbat, and Shabbat is preparing for itself. So it's true, I'm going there, I'm walking there, but that's a separate issue. Actually, making the Eruv happens on Shabbat. Okay, good. Ela me'ata ya'arvu be'lagin. Hold on, according to this, getting back to that case we saw a couple of days ago, when we had a flask of wine, and I had in it, I took maaser rishon, right, and I put it in the flask, but I didn't take the tirumah yet, the tirumat maaser, right, when I give a tenth to to the Levi himself has to take a piece and give it to the Kohen. And that piece is teruma, has to be tahor. And this is a flask that's only going to become pure at nightfall because it's tabul yom. And then I say, in that case, if I say the teruma that gets separated out should be the eruv. And so in that case, we said that it's a problem because at the same time that the teruma is taken out, it also that happens a split second before the item, the flask becomes tahor. Complicated case, right? But over there, we established that the eruv happened a split second before the border and not after. And if you're saying it happens after, then it should be okay. I should be able to have the teruma separated, and the flask will become tahor. And right after that, the eruv will kick in. But we didn't say that in that case. Oh, so here we have a different answer why the flask case didn't work. Anytime you're making an eruv, even if you say the eruv kicks in 1 millisecond after Seta Kochavim, still there's another principle that the eruv has to be ready, has to be prepared before Seta Kochavim starts, right? During Ben HaShemashot. Has to be a ready meal. And in this case, it would not be a ready meal because it wasn't yet separated b'tahara until nightfall. And so that's why that's a separate reason, but we can stick with this, that it happens right after. So therefore, I don't have a problem of hachana. I'm not preparing from Yom Tov to Shabbat because the eruv actually kicks in right at the beginning of Shabbat. All right, good. Ve'ela haditna Rabbi Eliezer omer Yom Tov asamuch leShabbat ben v'lefaneha ben v'lachareha ma'arev adam shnei aruvin ha'ba'anan seuda aruya mebe'od yom ve'leka. Hold on. Now that we're going back and forth. Now we're taking that principle that you just told me. I'm going to turn it back to the Rabbi Eliezer. You just told me that whenever I make the eruv, it has to be accessible at the time that has to be ready at the time that I make the eruv. However, in his case, this is the first case we started with in the Mishnah. If I have Yom Tov and Shabbat back to back, I can make 2 eruvs. And here's the problem. At the time that when I make the first eruv, the second eruv is not available. Why? Because I made them in 2 different directions. So one's all the way to the west. That means on Yom Tov, I can go 2,000 amot to the west, and I can go 0 to the east. Yeah, but that's fine. But my second eruv for Shabbat is 2,000 amot to the east. Well, I can't go there, right? Because it's Yom Tov, and I can't get there. So if you say that my eruv has to be accessible a minute before Shabbat starts, in this case, it's not accessible a minute before Shabbat starts because I made my eruv all the way to the west on Yom Tov, and so I won't be able to get there until after Yom Tov is over and Shabbat starts, right? So there's no time period before Shabbat when I can access it. So I hope that's clear. If it'll be clear from the answer, if not, Lo demanach lebesof elef amal lechan, besof elef amal lechan. Okay, we have a diagram here. So he says, what, did you think that I put it all the way 2,000 amot this way and 2,000 amot that way? Right, so let's imagine this is a city, and if the edge is a city here, and I put it all the way out here, and all the way out here, then you're right, I would not be able to access it. But if I make it not so, but rather, let's say the city is 1,000 amot around. So let's say this is my center, and I go from the edge of the city only 1,000 amot, and from this edge of the city only 1,000 amot, then even though let's say on Yom Tov, I make my eruv here. Okay, that's good. Now I can go another further 2,000 amot out this way, but I can still get to the center, right? I'm sorry, it's only, scratch that. Right, so here on Yom Tov, I made my eruv 1,000 amot outside the city. It's 2,000 amot from the center point, but only 1,000 amot from the edge of the city. So since I went 1,000 amot this way, I still have another 1,000 amot that way. I didn't use up the max on the credit card, right? And so I still have, as a center point, 1,000 amot each way. Now on Yom Tov, on the first day I make it, I can still go yet further out this way, right? Because I can go 2,000 amot this way, and then 1,000 amot here. The city doesn't count. I kind of skip over it in a quantum leap, and another 1,000 amot. Therefore, you see, on Yom Tov, where my center of gravity is here, I can still get to B, because B is only 1,000 amot out. Is that clear, or should I repeat that? Clear. Okay, good. And so therefore, that has to be the case, and only in that case would it actually work. Okay. All right, good. So we're almost done with this resolution. Abaye has one more difficulty. Ela hada amar Rav Yehuda erev bedaglav yom rishon me'arev bedaglav erev bedaglav yom rishon me'arev bedaglav yom sheni. If he says you can make an eruv the first day and the second day with your body, erev bepat yom rishon me'arev bepat yom sheni, or you could take the food the first day and then bring it back the second day. Wait a second. Hamechin kamechin miyom tov l'Shabbat. Now the same problem with him. Now you brought up this problem of he can't prepare. So aren't I preparing on that day by let's say I'm walking out there to the edge of the city, right? Even if it's the same place. In this case, it's the same place. I walk out to B. I have to walk out to B on Yom Tov as preparation for Shabbat. So I'm still preparing. Amar le misavelat da'azil v'amar mideh da'azil v'shatek v'yativ. So Rabbi can answer, what do you think that he went out there and said something and usually when you make an eruv, you have to say a declaration, right? Behold, I am declaring that this is my place and I can walk 2,000 amot from here. But truth is, you don't have to say something if you're there, standing there yourself, right? So did you think that he's saying something? I just walked there and I sat. I'm totally passive. So you can't tell me that I'm preparing if I'm just sitting there being passive, right? That can't be a problem. And so, okay, fine, that's an answer. But this answer is only good according to one opinion. Keman, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Damar, Chafseh Hefker, Konin Shevita. There's a separate machloket. We're going to get more into this, but Techum Shabbat applies not only to a person, but also to items. If I had a mask that was in the middle of a wilderness somewhere, that mask can only go 2,000 amot from wherever it is. Unless it's owned. If it's owned, then it follows wherever I am. It can go wherever I am. But if it's hefker, then if it's nobody's, then it gets konin shevita. It gets its own shevita wherever it happens to be. Now, if that's true for just an item, it's true all the more so for a person. If I'm just sitting out there in the middle of the wilderness somewhere, even if I don't say anything, automatically, just by being there, that becomes my center of gravity. So you see, it works. I don't have to say anything, and that way I'm not preparing. Okay, that only works for Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, but not for Rabbanan who don't hold this opinion that Hefker gets its place. But then we say, Afilu tema Rabbanan, even the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and don't have the law of Hefker, Ad kana peligi Rabbanan aled Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri ela biyashen, dela maseh amar, aber beneor di ba'elim amar, maseh amar, afagav dela amar, keman da amar dameh. Says no. The truth is, even the rabbis can agree to this principle because they would only disagree if a person's sleeping. And the person sleeping, then he's like an object. He has no right. He's just like a rock sitting there. And so then Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri would say he's konesh shevita. Rabbanan would say no. But if he's awake, and because he's awake, he's sitting with awareness, right? Since he could talk, and so he's being aware of his being in that place. And that's why even they would agree that you can konesh shevita, you can designate that as your spot, even if you don't say anything at all. Okay, let's just do one more line. Amar le Rabba Hanin Abaye, I'ava shemi'a le lemor hadetanya lo yalech adam lesof sadeh leda mahi sericha kayose bo lo yetalil adam al petach medina kedei sheyikanes lemelchas miyad hadarbe. So Rabba Bar Chanin says to Abaye, who said that answer, if the master knew this baraita, he would have changed his mind on what he just said. Which baraita? The baraita says you're not allowed to walk to the edge of your field to see on Shabbat, talking about, to see what's going to be required. You're kind of preparing for Shabbat to after Shabbat. Even though I'm not doing the actual work on Shabbat, I'm going out to the field to see, I need to plant this, I need to fix that fence. Don't go out to be, to the area, to the entrance of the city because you want to go to the bathhouse right after Shabbat ends. because by that travel is suspicious. That travel is preparing for where you want to be after Shabbat. And so you see, you're not allowed to go and travel to a place that you need to be in after Shabbat. And so if we apply that to our case, then he should change his mind. And that would mean I can't travel on Yom Tov to somewhere out there because I want to make an eruv there for Shabbat. That's also preparing. So really it should not be allowed. And final answer, velahi velohi shema le velah darbe. No, indeed, he heard of that baraita, and he would not change his mind because there's a difference. Hata mochecha milleta, hacha la mochecha milletahi. There, when you're walking around in your edge of your field, everyone sees, why is he walking at the edge of his field? Oh, he's preparing to do work. Why is he walking at the entrance of the city? Because he wants to go to the bathhouse. Everybody knows that he's doing it for a suspicious reason. But for here, it's not clear. He's walking around. I don't know why he's walking around. Maybe he just feels like going for a stroll. If he's a sage, maybe he's thinking of Torah and he's wandering around. He's aimlessly because he's in such concentration. He got lost out there. And we don't know where. He's not going anywhere specific. And if he's an Amaretz, maybe he lost his donkey and he's going around looking for it, which is fine. You could do that. You can do that on Yom Tov. And so therefore, since it's not going to a specific designation, doesn't look like he is, that therefore, for the outside looking in, it does not seem that he is actually preparing. And so therefore, it is okay to go, and that's not considered preparation to stand at your eruv spot on Yom Tov for Shabbat, even though you would not be allowed to walk out to the edge of your field to check out what you should think about doing after Shabbat is over. And so we've successfully seen all these various opinions about whether they're two separate holinesses or one period, and the various permutations in between. And we see how complicated this is because you can't prepare from one to the other, but it has to be edible and accessible from before one to the other. And so the Gemara processed all these different variations and resolved the various sources. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen v'Amen.